So what was your strategy to prepare for these interviews or for these rounds or in general preparing for this TPM as a role? What are the general resources that you used or you recommend for the audience who wants to move into this domain?
That's a very good question. Thank you so much, Sarthak. So, as I said, that there are four attributes on which or the four matrices they assess on. So, the first one is the GCA or the general cognitive ability. So, my first approach to get started with that particular attribute was to go through some of these channels. So, 𝐁𝐞𝐜𝐸 is one of them. Like on YouTube, you can browse, and he has amazing material on how to crack these role-related interviews. And I think I went through those. Plus, he has quite a good material on GCA, the problem solving, to understand what are the questions that generally are asked. There is a framework that is followed around the GCA questions. So that was my first go-to. I was also given really good material from the TA of Google after I cleared my second round, which is around the online TPM round. So that's when I first looked at those and then got a foundation form to understand how I can build my knowledge based on the basic that I'm already acquainted with. So post that, for system design, I followed a multiple channels to prepare on a high level. I was going through these really good system design for different kinds of applications. And the YouTuber name is 𝐂𝐞𝐈𝐿. I found those very handy, very crisp for any layman on a non-coder to understand what a system design for any app would be. Could be a streaming app, could be a social media app. So I think that was my first base. And then I started deep diving because I kind of liked the way some of the YouTubers used to take you to a low-level design. So I think there was one more YouTuber called Narendra L, Tech Dummies or that's the name of the YouTube channel. And then Gaurav Singh. So I was following their channels to understand at the microservices level how each of these applications are kind of scaled. So that was my second level of preparation. I was also going through quite a few, I would say, offline documents. Now these were from my fellow TPMs. They also came very handy because they were mostly around GCA and problem solving. And some of them were my fellow product managers from the previous companies, because the GCA interviews are somewhat similar for both of these roles. So I think that is what helped me. And I used to pick this up and practice, or basically have mock interviews with my colleagues or my cohorts to kind of get more confident on these rounds. For the role related knowledge, as I said, that I used to refer to the material given by my TA. I was also referring to 𝐁𝐸𝐸 to kind of understand. There were other few channels where there was a clear, breakdown of how these role-related rounds are kind of conducted. If at all there is a hypothetical question, how to go about with it. So the first key thing which I did for the role-related knowledge interview was to kind of start noting down what was my experience for a particular situation thrown. And there's a set of 15 classic behavioral questions that come in any of the TPM rounds across all man companies, to be precise. So I kind of wrote them down, and these used to be the anecdotes from my previous TPM experience, and then practice them over and over again. So that was a week's practice. And then I started kind of giving a few mock interviews, and then just to get into the zone before I, kind of face the actual interview. But pretty much this was my preparation strategy for a month before I kind of landed in the last round, which is your on-site or virtual on-site of 4 to 5 interviews.
Yeah, I think very exhaustive set of things that you mentioned, and all the links that you have mentioned, or the YouTube channels, I will try to put them in the description box below. So audience, you can check that out. And definitely it takes a lot of effort to go through these resources and find out which makes more sense to you, which is understandable to you and will be helpful in the interviews, because they are generic in sense they could be helpful for a product manager or a software developer who are into the system design. Yeah. And what you want to get the best out of that recording and the video and from that YouTuber is totally up to you. And I think as you mentioned, you have filtered out some of these resources and will put in the description box below. But yeah, I think finally you were able to crack those interviews, as in your preparation went successful, everything has been done, and you have moved to Google. You got the good news from the TA and everything, and you got onboarded. So how is it your life? I think it's been long enough, a year and a half. But how is it being a Googler or working at Google feels like? What are the perks that you're enjoying or the things that you love at Google right now?
Thank you so much, Sarthak. It brings me a smile when I'm listening to that question, because it's a question which is more around the experiences I had. And I'll not go to the perks part because I think everyone is aware of that. But as a person who really look forward to learning, I believe it's been a really humbling journey and a great learning experience so far. I very well remember the first day when I joined, and it was a virtual onboarding, and I had my set of team meetings and one-on-one, and I was really nervous and intimidated. But to my surprise, the team members and the leadership came across as some of the most friendly and down-to-earth people. They helped me get ramped up with the domain and the processes. And they also kind of helped me get rid of my imposter syndrome to a bit. I'm still kind of in the process to get rid of it completely, but by and large, I believe it has been an experience where I got to, and I'm still working with some of the smartest minds, learning about the technology, about the product, about the processes, about life experiences on daily basis. So it has now become more like work passion, life passion, status quo. And in short, it has been a great experience working, collaborating, learning as an individual and a professional. So I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I think totally. We have always heard good things about Google, about the culture, about the people, how approachable they are, how friendly they are, and it's the whole wholesome environment you get about learning and your growth at the place. So I think, without even working at Google, I can second that from the experience of my friends and as you have mentioned. And towards this, we move towards the last part of the podcast and the last question. And I think it's also very important for a person in the audience to know how they can correctly identify if this role is perfect fit for them, or if this is something that they should be feel aligned to, or something around that.
Thank you so much, Sata, for that question. So I believe there are three key traits, and it's a universal trait, I would say, to have an understanding or acknowledging the fact that, hey, I'm ready for this role. And then there are multiple traits that can build on these three foundational traits. So the first trait, which they say peeling an onion, right? So any project which you are part of, it has to have a goal, right? So the key part of, or the key role of a TPM is to understand what is the goal of that program or that initiative, right? So when a project starts, there is a goal associated with it, which is directional, but it is vague. So the primary role of TPM is to get a clarity, to understand what is the goal all about. It may not come on the first day. It's a day in, day out activity. So there'll be ambiguities around the program, which the TPM has to kind of resolve on the go and align the teams, bring in the clarity to understand what they are doing, why they are doing, and how they will do it, right? So that's the primary, I would say, trait. Firstly, to resolve the ambiguity around the goal. Secondly, to also bring in clarity who the stakeholders will be that will get involved in this program. And again, to ensure them that they are also aligned with the goal as to what they are doing, why they are doing, and how they will do it.
Okay.
So that's the first trait. The second trait, I would say, is distilling a program into chunks. So when you wear your technical hat, that's where the TPM part comes into the picture. The TPM can leverage their technical knowledge to understand which are the work streams that this project or this program particularly needs, right? And who will be the stakeholders they need to kind of work with, which are the teams they need to bring in, the cross-functional, the cross-team aspect of any program, asking the right question, aligning the efforts of each of these teams. So that's the second important trait of a technical program manager, and understanding the fact that who they can pull in by leveraging your technical knowledge. So the TLDR is basically looking at the bigger picture of any program and just not a chunk or a milestone from a certain team per se. So that's the second key trait. The third trait is communication. Now, communication is like the most powerful tool when it comes to being a technical program manager. So being very aware and thoughtful about what you're communicating and how you're communicating, being crystal clear with your communication to your partners and stakeholders is the primary key to any successful execution of a program. So it's very important when you have that as a tool to influence the teams that you are not directly managing. And you also use that to know when you have to influence and or when you can actually leverage the help of the leadership to influence the team. We also have to kind of work with the non-technical partners, as I said, the marketing, legal, operation, etc., to get onto their radar, to onboard them, support these programs towards the launch, which is also very important. So it's not just about the engineering delivery, but it's also about having these partners involved in the entire program set to help you launch a product or a feature successfully.
Yeah, totally. I think it makes sense. And I think very crisply you laid out the 3 points that are the traits one can identify themselves with this role. And I believe if anyone who is listening in the audience can identify this as your primary trait, can move into this domain. And obviously, we have discussed all the things about the TPM in this podcast. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge in such a great manner. I was able to get a lot of knowledge today itself, a lot of things in depth about TPM, how they function, what are the things they are aligned to, and how you can become a good TPM in general. So yeah, thank you so much for joining in for this podcast, taking out time for this, and sharing all these details in depth.
Thank you so much, Sarthak, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share my experience. And thank you, everyone who is listening to this podcast. Please follow his channel. It's very, very informative, and I'm a big fan. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for the audience listening in, I will see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.